have 15 questions for Mr. Osman. 15. No, but I will no, I will not pose all the 15 questions now. But you were the first one to talk about distributing development gains. Remember back then? And now you said that development is more important than equality. I think we're going backward. I'm a bit surprised here, but this is not my question. Here I want to ask all of you, since 2008, whenever we conduct the survey, when it comes to the highest quantile, the highest 6% starts from 2,800. If you divide the annual income by the number of months, then you would get 2,800. So you consider these people rich. So if you say that this is the highest quintile, and the consumption of this people decreased. From my own reading, no, these people get at least 5,000 or 6,000. This is the middle class. But upper middle class did not reduce their consumption. I know. You need to detail the brackets more. This is a bit confusing for me. And the average of Gini coefficient is good. Why? Which is not realistic. Let me finish, please. Let me finish. The main idea here is different quantiles were fixed, as if the poor performance are static, but the rich people reduce their consumption. I'm not objecting or I'm not disagreeing. I have a question here. I'm posing a question, and this has different implications throughout the survey. So this, yes, there is like an upper middle class or A class that we don't analyze. No, you need to analyze everything in order for decision makers to take that into consideration. Why are you excluding some people? Yes, some people who take like 2,000 EGP a month, they are not rich. Yes, they are not like objectively poor, but they are not rich. Yes, but when it comes to drafting the policies, I'm not referring to this survey per se, but of course, if you want to design a strategy, then you need to detail everything. But the ministers say that the rich people don't deserve so and so and so, and this is not the case. Yeah, but this is a bit off topic. So now we are trying to read the data. This will make decision makers misled. No, this is not our point. Yeah, of course, the highest 10% of the society or the richest 2% of the society should also be studied. You said that equality of benefits in rural areas are more than urban areas. So just a question, do people go back to rural areas because things are better now there? I'm sorry, she's not holding a microphone, so I cannot get to hear her in the translation room. Public assistance programs or cash transfers for poor in the 30s were were linked to economic policy. So for example, poor people will get assistance, they will consume more, they will purchase more, the economy will thrive, institutions can employ people in order to have a complete viable cycle. I have a question here. Takaful and Karama as a public assistance program, is it related in any sense to any development policy? Or is it or does it work in isolation? Does this help people get out of the cycle of poverty or just to survive? Thank you. When I listen to the results of these surveys, I'm usually worried about the methodology. So I guess that you in CapMass go to visit rural areas, urban areas, and ask people some questions like, what is your income? How much do you spend? Let me tell you that 50% of the people are liars. So how do you trust the answers, and to what extent do you consider the results reliable? Because some people might hide information. Half of the GDP is parallel economy, informal economy. So maybe people make 3,000 or 4,000 EGP, but they are still considered poor people because their income is not tracked or is not monitored. So I'm not saying that this is in vain. I appreciate the effort you exerted, but here, how can we rely on this information? Because it might be misleading, because the answers are not accurate, sorry to say so, because a lot goes off the radar. The poverty line, which is 700 something AGP, if we divided by 30 days, then that would be $1. Is that like an international poverty line, or it's a national poverty line? Because if it's the international poverty line, then subsidy and other aid were not taken into consideration. I think we should have our own national poverty line. Dr. Muhammad. Thank you, Dr. Abla. My question is, before asking, you raised the question during your speech about the demand on real estate that has gone up, while in reality people don't use these holdings. So it's hoarding real estate investment. I expected that we should discuss a methodology. So we did not discuss the methodology, we discussed the results. And I think it's important to understand the methodology used in the survey, how to prepare the survey, how to get these results, and we should voice our own feedback. The problem here, from my own point of view, is that we do not differentiate between the scope of poverty and the types of poverty. And these are two different stories. Many of the off dialogue points go back to this differentiation. Dr. Osman, the friendship between poverty and unequitable or unequal distribution. I think they go hand in hand, and we need to study these two phenomena together. Most of the studies that focus on income, consumption, and expenditure are problematic. So yes, I might get an accurate picture, but from the wrong perspective. And it's the other way around as well. No, the objective was not tackling the methodology. No, we wanted to read or analyze the results, because these are the most important points to be taken into consideration. I'm sorry, Dr. Hiba is not holding a microphone. I cannot get to hear her in the translation booth. So the main focus today is not even reading the numbers. We have abject poverty, and we need to tackle that, and we need to draft policies to respond to that. Otherwise, we're going in circles. Or we are discussing numbers. Is it 11% or 13%? 11 in itself is a problem.
Dr. Laila El Khawaja, but actually your comment about your observation about housing and stock peeling is very correct. Actually, I disagree with Dr. Osman all the time. Please Doctor, please, all the comparisons are done with the fixed prices, and therefore the effect of inflation is excluded. You are saying that there are indications that they are improved concerning the equality in the distribution of the income, but equality, the distribution of the opportunities that they are related to poverty is a totally different story. But the percentage of poverty is inherited from generation to generation, and at the end you are saying that the economic development is the only solution. But the period from 2015 till 2018, it witnessed development. It is a main solution, but actually it is not the only one, because poverty is a problem bigger than this, and it needs detailed policies according to the characteristics of the families. When I have my families, my parents, that they are not educated, for sure I'm going to be a poor person. And this actually, the last point, the database of consumption is something, and the database of the Ministry of Planning says that the catalyst for development is the development in exporting and general investments. So how can you say that there is a problem? They admit this because they have the database, they have the information. Thank you, Dr. Abla. Thank you, Doctor. In addition, yes, I totally agree with you, actually. I totally agree with you. These are averages. There is a proverb saying that if you took a man, if you take someone and you put his head in the oven and his legs in the freezer, his temperature will be average, and he's actually a dead person. This is a reality. Development has nothing to do with our green square, with poverty. Also, in addition to this, the population problem that we are facing. Dr. Huda Yusuf, World Bank. Thank you very much. I have a quick question. I don't know if it's going to be classified in the methodology. I wanted to comment on the sample of the research. If we did a test here in the room, for example, how many of you got the survey about the consumption and expenditure information? This will give us an idea to what extent these results are covering the middle class sector. Thank you very much, Dr. Mona Al-Garf. If you have any question, yes, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I don't want to be lengthy, but I want to say that reading the analysis, what's required is to look at this information, to look at this database. Yes, the presentation and the discussion were talking about this, but actually the research is full of information and full of results that each point of it can be taken as a policy. Yes, we are talking about the coverage, the problems of the coverage, the transparency, but for sure we all feel that there is an increasement in the percentage of poverty all over the state. And this tell us, yes, so we do have development, but the development was not enough, and the social aids were not enough, and the social cash flow was not enough. Yes, some improvement were occurred in Lower Egypt, but we still have problems in Upper Egypt. So I have to tackle the problem in a different way. Then I have another comment concerning the regulation and concerning the policies. As Dr. Heba mentioned, the characteristics of the poor people, they are the same all over the governorates, and this actually raises questions why we are not tackling, we are not solving these problems. We have the same characteristics for the poor people all over the state. Then I would like to talk about the second point, which is the component for the the products that they are not food and beverages. So what about also the education service? What about the health service and the social insurance service? is another point that I actually studied, and I would like to discuss it with Dr. Heba. I don't know if it is right or wrong, because I'm not specialized in this field. When I looked at the level of education and the level of poverty, actually the percentage of poverty increased in the university graduate people. Actually, the education is not going to do a social mobilization. So what are the attitudes, what are the trends, what are the job opportunities that you are creating? So these are two very important points that we have to tackle. Then the last point, it might be a naive question. The poverty line, Dr. Heba, in the rural area, you said it differ from one place to another, and according to the number of the families and according to the household of the family. But actually, you said that the rural area are higher percentage comparing to the urban areas. The characteristics or the criteria, it's as a result of the state policy. The job opportunities for those who are not educated, those people, they work in the construction, for example. In the rural area, I don't know if this is correct or wrong. In the rural area, the distribution makes the prices even higher than the urban areas. So actually the prices are higher than the urban areas. Mrs. Manal Abdelmena. Thank you very much, Doctor. I have a comment. I'm not sure if I read it correctly in the income. If I'm talking about Upper Egypt, for example, do you calculate that the household is working abroad? Can you see that the cash flow or the transition, the cash transition? What is the name? From the Egyptian people working abroad can affect this point. Do you really calculate this in the consumption? And the consumption is parallel in a good percentage with the income. And did you put in consideration the people that they are in debt? Did you calculate this? The other point is concerning the consumption. When we say, for example, food and beverage, there is an item, I don't know, which is the snacks food that actually penetrate our society. And actually all the sectors that they are consuming these snacks, especially the sector that they don't focus on the healthy food. Dr. Abla, when you mentioned China and how they reduced the percentage of poverty, as my work is in Africa, China actually did two things. First of all, the demography plan was changed. Only last year they allowed the families to have a second child, and there is a clear decision that 30% to export 30% of their inhabitants, of their population. You can see them in the African countries. India, in order to combat poverty, 2025, the plan of India is education. And this is the methodology of combating poverty. The plan will end in 2025, and the main solution is education. And please follow up the development for the eradication of poverty and combating poverty. It is only education, and they have a clear methodology. Thank you very much, Mrs. Manel. Yes, China, yes, but these are not the only reasons. Dr. Wasil Sharif, please. I have actually two questions. The relation between the poverty and the number of the families. People are saying because if it is a big family, so the poverty will increase. Actually, I see the other way around. I see that poverty is one of the main reasons to have big families. The second point, in order not to go to get into details, we have in a trend from 1999 up till now. There is an increasement in poverty. We have global crisis, revolutions, lots of things happened in the previous 20 years, and regardless of this, the percentage of poverty is increasing. So for sure, there is a reason, a big reason in the way of treating the economic development in Egypt. Whatever we do, the percentage of poverty is increasing. So I think that this is the point that we need to focus on, regardless all the fine details that we are talking about. Dr. Rasha Abdel Hakim, please.
I would like to comment that the problem relies with development and not poverty. In World Economic Forum Development Inclusive Development Index, Egypt ranks 70s, so it's a very low ranking. They measure wealth Gini coefficient. Egypt 0.91. So how can I say this? We are very close to extremely unjust distribution of wealth. So Egypt on distribution of income is average, but when it comes to distribution of wealth, it's terrible. It's terrifying. Even if it's a miscalculation, then it's an indicator of the gravity of the situation when it comes to wealth distribution. Mr. Ahmed Dawood. Dr. Osman said a shocking thing for me. He said something to the effect that without takaful and karama and without subsidy, the poverty rate will go up by 4%. So let's cancel these subsidies. Here we're talking about 4 million people. 4 million people. I come from a rural area in El Delta. I live among poor people. Let me give you 3 examples of 3 families, not 4 million people. A week ago, I was in my village and a female neighbor of us got excluded from Takaful and Karama after 2 years. Her neighbors went to calm her because she had like a nervous breakdown because she used this money to get medicine for her boys. Another example, the breadwinner of the family uses a donkey to provide financially for the tuition fees for the children. The donkey died. The boy had to leave school to help the father, and the girls stopped getting the lessons she needs to join the university. Poor people in rural areas are suffering a lot because they lend with low interest rate, and they go to buy some vegetables with 95 pounds without any money, and then they would ask to pay back later. It's not about the numbers. Let me tell you, people are dying. You cannot consider people as numbers. It's much worse on the ground. My question for Dr. Osman, since he's close to the backstage of decision-making circles, do these results shock decision makers? Or are these results not in line with the trends of economic policies? Or these numbers are quite expected? because some policies focus more on cutting subsidies, for example, and on reducing the value of our currency. Priorities are confusing. We do not focus on income generating sectors. So, simply put, my question is, are these numbers normal or acceptable, or are these numbers shocking? Is it in line with the priorities of the economic policy or not? Do we analyze the shortcomings, and is it a real shortcoming, or is it an accounting miscalculation, and how can we address these shortcomings, or what are the remedies? Last question, please, very briefly. To what extent can we bridge the gap between the rich and the poor? Here we have a focus on poverty, poverty mapping, poor characteristics, but still rich people get in contact with poor people, and we still have a hot topic on subsidy given to rich people. The research said that poverty is on the rise, and Dr. Heba said so clearly. But how to differentiate between poor people, rich people, who gets the subsidy? I'm sorry, it's not about the argument on the subsidy. It's much more than that. What is the objective of development? Development should be human-centered. Eradicating poverty should be the priority. It's not about the argument or the controversy or the hot topics. The state should play a role, and NGOs should complement that role. But of course, the primary responsibility is for the state, and this is not done through subsidies. We should have a reform. We should have transparency. We should have civic places. Those who get education should get a decent work. We need to reform the education system, because we still have university graduates who are unemployed. So it's a holistic reform that we need. I will refer to a few things here. First, we measure standards of living through consumption. Consumption or actual consumption. So, for example, if someone gets subsidy, then they get certain commodity without fees, right? So let's say this people get 2 kilograms of rice for 20 pounds. So subsidy, one way or another, is included, because we measure standards of living in terms of consumption of goods and services. We evaluate the actual consumption to say, and this has nothing to do with living abroad or working in Egypt. Maybe, yes, the breadwinner is living abroad and is saving up money to buy a land or to buy a house. This is not included. I focus more on what does his family consume, how much does this family spend. So the focus is not on the income, it's on the actual consumption. Ms. Hoda Badran talked about the impact of Takaful and Karama program. The coverage is narrow. It focuses on a certain bracket of people. So families with children, and here we are referring to 20% only of poor families. So not all poor people are covered. I'm sorry, Dr. Abla is not holding a microphone, so I couldn't get the question. So the coverage is only 20%. As for the elderly, it covers only 3.5%, so it's not that big, or it's not a major success story. Additionally, the value of this transfer or of this money is fixed. It did not respond to the inflation rate. Despite its importance, yeah, £1 is important. You all know it. Remember, Dr. Osman, when you were working in the Ministry of Planning, and some workers went on a strike in 2008, and I remember what you said. They're striking for £10 a month, a £10 raise. So this little money represents much importance to poor people. Just like Ahmed Dawood said, there was a research conducted on the impact of Takaful and Karama program. It was not a nationwide study, but they measured the consumption pattern. So, of course, when they get more money, they consume more. Normal. But just as Dr. Abla said, as if you have someone who's sick and you give them painkillers without real treatment. We need other strategies to ease the suffering of the people. To Takaful and Karama subsidies, for me, they are nothing more than painkillers to ease the symptom, but not the cause. Yes, regarding the methodology, we answered this question.
Concerning the sample, I'm not an expert, but the sample, it it was taken all over the government, and I think it's about 24,000 families or 25,000 families. I think that is not bad. This is a well-known methodology. And there was someone from the World Bank commenting on this. There was an expert from the World Bank because one of the comments said that these surveys don't reach the most poor and the most rich class. And we found that this is a normal trend all over the world. Maybe the Gini indicator to it was at that time 31, it became 32. So it was a kind of adjustment for the rich families. Education, it's very clear, or its impact as a solution or as an impact on the job opportunities. I would like to comment on China that there are specific regulation and laws and legislations for the number of children. There is, like in Indonesia and Malaysia, they were able to reduce the number of population by education, not by law. By education and by offering job opportunities for the women. So I see in my own point of view that the key or the solution for any problem is the education and the quality of education. Yes, Dr. Yasser, yes, the poverty in the circle, in the family, yes, it's like a circle. The poor families, they want to have many children in order that the children will work and they will support the family. So it is like a circle. Here we are talking about the analysis for the consumption and the income. It is not the same indicator for the resources and the wealth. is this was expected or not? I was attending a conference with the Prime Minister once we presented the results of the survey, and he said that the percentage 4% is not bad. There are countries that they implemented the economic development, the percentage was doubled. So actually they were expecting a worse result than this. Thank you. I'm very happy with this fruitful discussion that they were transferred, that lots of criticism, and you all agreed with Dr. Heba and Dr. Abla. I think that this is a gender discrimination against my opinion. The message that I would like to deliver in such seminars is, and I will say it loud and clear, the problem of Egypt is poverty. The percentage are not important, 32, 36, 25. This is not important. What's important is if I have only 5%, I have to deal with them in order to combat poverty, and not to deal with them by social funds or financial funds. The solution is China economic development, 10% and 12%. Now they are complaining that the economic development is 6 or 7. We are exerting lots of effort in order to reach 6 or 7%. This means that the economic development is the solution. It doesn't matter the percentage about rich people, about luxurious people. This will always exist, as in China. China, that they have this, they have millionaires, but millions of people, they were out of the circle of poverty because they worked, they produced, they increased the production, they export. So it's an exciting story. So the idea is, it doesn't make sense that throughout the 50 or 60 years, the economic development, the average economic development percentage is 4 to 4.5%. We are talking about people, we are talking about population. We have to work, we have to produce. Where is the production? This is the problem. This doesn't mean that I neglect other issues and to talk only about education and to say that education is the only solution to have a generation, a well-educated generation. But what I'm going to do with the 45 million people that they are poor now? Half of them, they work in informal sector. The idea, this is the idea. The same thing goes with the policies of the resources and the wealth. Shall we do a kind of nationalization as we did in the 50s? We don't have a fair way in distributing the wealth. We have to focus on solving these problems, on discussing these economic policies, and to implement short and medium terms economic plans and policies. And what I'm going to do with the wealth, for example, I have 100 fadens, 100 acres. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to issue a decree to nationalize the other 50 acres. So let's focus. This doesn't mean that I am neglecting the other indicators about the high prices, the unemployment, the education, the level, the education quality. No, we are talking about the research or the analysis of the income and the consumption, which is the main result of this analysis is there is an increasement in poverty. So here we have a methodological problem. What I am suggesting in the comments that I wrote on CAPMAS, I am a decision maker that this survey, the CAPMAS, they have the decision to say, instead of conducting this analysis every 5 years, let's conduct it every 2 years. And thanks to them, CAPMAS, they implement this. Dr. Heba, or one of the colleagues, what is the reaction of the government? For me, or the policymakers, I actually obliged the government to listen to the studies talking about poverty, talking about the poor families, and where are the poor families. And with the help and under the supervision of the Prime Minister, we conducted the project of the southern poor villages, and we designed a program to implement this project. Here we have the characteristics of the poor people. They are not educated, so we are going to educate them. Who is educated? Who is not educated? You don't have a school, so we built a school, and so on. We started with 150 villages, and I put in the design code southern. Every ministry, every decision maker, every policy maker make sure that to support these 150 villages was part of the budget. This is the reaction of the policy makers. Why it did not work? Because one of the politicians, the ambitious politicians, transferred this program from a governmental program to a political campaign. So the reputation of the project was ruined, and people lost trust in the project and lost the trust in the ministerial committee for the social and economic development that was responsible for activating this project. So the project died because of this politician. So these points are very important. I'm not a minister anymore. I'm a former minister. Dr. Heba, and you know me when I was a minister, how I used to work. Dr. Atif, please, if you allow me to talk. Most of you don't know me, that Dr. Atif Abed, God rest his soul in peace, in a meeting with the experts of the World Bank talking about the problem of poverty, I was telling him that we are going to conduct studies and researches. So one of them asked him, it was the beginning of the problem of the targeting. So he laughed and said, Dr. Osman, he knows the poor people one by one and family by family. He's exaggerating, actually, but actually the idea that you have studies, we have researchers, we know where they are, who they are, from where they are coming, what do they do for a living, and so on. We know all the information about them. I'm very proud. We are the first country to conduct the geographical targeting with the specification, with the criteria. And most of the poor people, they were in the southern villages. This project was supposed to be implemented in 4 years. This is the real implementation, the real translation, the real interpretation for the policies. With scientific discussion, we have to talk about methodologies, about strategies, but here we have results. What was published is that, okay, poverty increased. And that was translated into that the government or the cabinet failed in fulfilling the goals. I asked Dr. Heba and her colleagues with the World Bank team in 2008. The average growth change and what is the impact on poverty, the impact of development and the growth on poverty. And I suggested the survey that will be conducted every 3 months. We conducted in February 2005. I asked the CABMAS to conduct the panel survey. The families that they were asked in 2005, in February 2004, what are the situation of the families in 2004? to ask them again in February 2008. The result was yes, a social mobilization happened in the 4 or 5 years. The poverty was reduced from February 2005 till February 2008, something like that. 2008, the percentage of poverty increased. So this here we have a problem concerning the methodology. In February 2005 till February 2005, it was a panel who was poor and who was not poor and became poor. And the main result is that the growth was enough, was sufficient. The whole year was a different result. Yes, because that was the beginning of the food crisis. The food crisis started in 2008 when we conducted the survey in the summer and in the winter. That was the impact of the economic crisis and the food crisis. So I prefer now, after we had enough of the surveys that is conducted every 2 years, if I am one of the policy makers, I will say, okay, CAPMAS, thank you very much. You have been 10 years. You are taking a sample, 40,000 on conducted four times a year. No, I want 10,000 families that they were in February or April 2007. What's their situation in 2011 or in 2015? We can do this, both of them, but I'm talking here about the coast. Here I would like to clarify the idea that not to be that sad because poverty is increasing without knowing the reasons, and at the same time to say, wow, it's a disaster, and this number is because of technical discussions that are transferred to political reactions. I'm not talking as a former minister. No, I'm talking as a professor of economics, as a specialist. Thank you.
When it comes to the inflation rate, let me go back. Do you know how much 700 EGP make how many dollars? The purchasing power parity is 7.5 or 8. Let me finish. This is science. This is how professionals tackle these numbers. And yes, it makes a difference. Because the poverty line here is $4, and the World Bank and the UN says the poverty line is $2. Can we go for a sensitivity analysis? I'm not trying to beautify the picture. We are trying to be more accurate and to verify the numbers we have. The examples set by our colleague are painful, but it's the same all over the world. We have many vulnerable people all over the world. But as an official, how can I help these people? That is the question. We can take it from there. Here I'm spending much money in subsidies system, and poverty is on the rise and people are suffering. Then why are we spending this money in the first place? Why? Why are we giving subsidies to 80% of Egyptians? Why? Do all these people deserve, or some people deserve more than others? So the fight going in the media regarding cancelling certain food cards for poor people. No, we will not cancel that for everyone. We want the real beneficiaries to get the subsidy. We don't want people to manipulate the rules to get the subsidy when they don't need it. Takaful and Karama and other public assistance programs were geared towards helping those who need most. we held a meeting. We invited ministers from Chile, Brazil, and Mexico to study their models. And they told us about some programs that encouraged people to send their children to school, about what we might call conditional public assistance models. Last but not least, I think I answered that before. When you say about when you say that some rich people have more land or have factories, or that the wealth is not equally distributed, what do you want me to do? To nationalize things? What do you mean by imposing taxes on wealth? I'm sorry, I can't get to hear some comments from the audiences because they're not holding a microphone. So, sorry. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for clarifying things. And takaful and karama is not the subject of our attack or our criticism. The thing is, we cannot sell this as the main mechanism. We should complement this with other projects like 1000 Village. We should couple that with institutional reform in order for the system to be able to generate development and growth and reach the poor people. Finally, I want to thank all the speakers. Ms. Amal, thank you. Dr. Hiba, thank you so much. And I want to thank Dr. Muhammad Osman, and I want to thank the statistics team in my center. They worked hard with Ms. Amal, Mr. Ahmed, Mr. Hussam, Mr. Muhammad Khatir, and their boss, Mr. Wahi. Please stand up. You deserve a round of applause. You do. Thank you so much. October the 9th will witness the WEF report, and we are responsible for the Egyptian part. So we will showcase the results of this report on October the 9th here. Thank you so much.